Our next question comes from somebody. Mike Marshall in Texas. In light of the rearrest of Gonzalo Lira, have you changed your opinion about him being an intelligence asset?
I don't discuss Gonzalo Lira. He's no significance to me. Anybody knows the story knows that he's a man who I interviewed twice, maybe 3 times. He told me to, straight up, and he put it on his webpage that if he disappears for more than 12 hours, to consider him to be on a list of people who have been kidnapped and killed by Ukrainian secret services. He missed an interview with George Galloway. Galloway's people called me and said, "Have I heard from Gonzalo Lira?" I had not. There were some social media postings that indicated that he might have been taken prisoner by the SBU or even the Kraken unit, which is a sort of a death squad of the affiliate of the SBU. And so I wrote an article to try to bring attention to this. I talked about, if the stories about Gonzalo Lira's demise are true, then the silence of the West is deafening and shameful. And then Gonzalo appears a couple days later and literally starts calling me out. "How come you said I was dead?" And I said, "Shut the fuck up. I'm done with Gonzalo Lira. You don't get arrested by the SBU being a pro-Russian or pro-Russian, pro-Western asset and then released and allowed to continue to do the same work unless you're working with the SBU. There might have been some restrictions on what he was doing, and he might have violated those restrictions. That's between him, the SBU, and whatever government wants to come in and intercede on his behalf. But I'm done with Gonzalo Lira.
All right, fair enough. We don't need to address that issue any further. And let's see. Alexei in Moscow, would you please share, this is an interesting question, Scott, would you please share what you did not like about Russia during your trip? Some comparisons in favor of the USA, maybe. Also, it would be great if you could share Vika's impressions, that's Scott's daughter, and how they differ from yours.
Well, I wasn't going there to be to try and do a comparison between Russia and the United States. And if we do that, we're getting into scorekeeping. Are there things in America that are better than Russia? Yeah, there are. But there's a lot of things in Russia that are better than America. So this is a stupid game. I don't mean to be insulting Alexei, but when I landed in JFK, I am driving out of a crumbling airport onto crumbling infrastructure through a crumbling city. That's the reality of New York City today. When I land in Sheremetyevo, I'm landing in a pristine airport. I'm driving through pristine highways into a city that is pristine, built and continuing to be built. So you can't do that. Now, if you want to, compare and contrast the state of democracy in the two places, you can't do that. Russia has poor tap water too. You don't want to drink the water that comes out of Russian tap water as well. That's why they have bottled water. But this is Russia. It's not my place to sit there and come up with artificial comparisons. I was trying to go there on a mission to define the Russian soul, define the Russian people. Look, I'll give Alexei an example. In Crimea, my host took me to his hometown where he grew up as a child. This is in Crimea. There's no running water. There's no sewage system. That means that you take a crap in a hole in the back, and his neighbors are there. This is in 2023, ladies and gentlemen, and people who live in villages next door to them all have running water. They all have gas. They all have everything you want. Here, these people had to put their money together to dig a well to get well water, just so that they have running water to do basic cleaning and stuff like that. They don't have gas. There's a gas line 500 meters away. You could tap into that and deliver gas to the homes. You can't do that. There's no canalization, which means there's no water coming to the homes. You can't flush a toilet. And yet here's the thing. Does that define Russia? Am I going to focus on that and say, aha, because this village doesn't have this, because who knows? Maybe it's corruption. Maybe it's incompetency. Maybe it's a mixture of the two. That's going to define Russia. You know what defines Russia for me? Was the hostess. who invited us into her home and had a huge table set up with food, the hospitality she put out there, the way she sat down and opened her family up to us and talked to us and laughed with us and shared stories with us. That's what defined me. And that's how I'm viewing Russia. I'm viewing Russia from that experience. I could have gone in with a scorecard and played the gotcha game on a whole bunch of things, just like anybody can come right now and do the gotcha game here in the United States as well. But we're not going to improve relations between Russians and Americans by playing gotcha. I'll break that whip. We're going to improve relations between Russians and Americans by learning to define each other as human beings.
All right, you didn't answer the question about Vika's impressions.
I'll let Vika define her impressions. I mean, I'm not going to speak on behalf of Vika. She seemed to have had a very good time.
Well, we can talk about this some more on Thursday night, but after Vika did what we're about to show here, she said it was the coolest thing she's ever done in her life.
They put a fat man in a skinny man suit. That was a mistake. And Vika's looking at me going, no, I don't want to do that. Look, I'm a rock. Now watch her. Look at my face. they had to crank that wind tunnel up.
All right, we'll get into that more.
To get me just to float, they had to crank that wind tunnel up. My face was.
All right. I don't know if you were listening when she said that, but she said it was the coolest thing she ever did in her life.
Oh, I know what she said. I mean, the first thing she was going to say was that was the most badass thing she's ever done in her life. And I said, Vika, you're in Chechnya. Women don't speak like that. So she had to tone it down.
All right. Well, we can say badass here. On the other hand, I don't know if we can say this name because I have no idea how to say it. I think this is somebody from Belgrave. Maybe you know how to read that. What are the chances that the occupying forces of NATO will leave the Serbian province of Kosovo one day, as they did from Iraq and Afghanistan?
100%. It's an unsustainable situation. I mean, NATO's talking about reinforcement with another battalion, and another battalion could come in at a time when they're talking about trying to build up NATO forces going up against, Russia and all this. This is a problem. The Serbian people are fed up. I think we saw with the violence the other day. They're just not going to sit there and let NATO get away with this. Let the Kosovars get away with this, and there's a good chance this could break out into violence. And if that happens, it's no longer a peacekeeping mission; it's a war-making mission. And I don't think Europe is ready to swallow that pill right now, especially when this is the Kosovars' fault. This is not the Serbian people's fault. It's not the Serbian government's fault. I mean, I blame the Serbian government for some weakness, lack of a spine, so to speak. But no, I don't think NATO is going to be there for forever.
Okay, let's move on to the next question, and then we'll take some questions live. Also, we can take it on the phone. Also, comments coming in on Facebook and YouTube. And here's from Rachel in Memphis. Is there a way for Americans to be able to watch Russian TV channels like Channel 1 and other main channels in Russia with English subtitles? For example, Russian talk shows like The Great Game, Vladimir Solyov's talk show.
I mean, the answer is yes. Rachel, the best way to do this, and I don't know if you're already a member, join my Telegram channel, come into the chat room, and ask that question. There will be a variety of Russian moderators who are very good, and they will guide you through the process of gaining access to these channels and getting the English subtitles. A lot of this is already automated, already done. It's just a matter of clicking into the right places to to gain access to it. But your question has been asked in the chat channel several times, and I know for a fact that Russian moderators or even just informed Russian participants will gladly take you through the process of gaining access to any Russian language channel you want and helping you turn that into English subtitles.
Jeff in Baker, Missouri, do you think Ukraine is used as a testing ground for a future U.S. dictatorship? Z has pushed the envelope and gotten away with everything from banning religion and free speech to mass murder. The neocons see this. You can take USA, add water, shake, and you get Ukraine.
No, I disagree totally because there's something called the Constitution of the United States, and um, as much as I denigrate the American court system, um, the court system still is there as a defender of constitutional rights, and I don't see Ukraine as being anything other than the horrific humanitarian tragedy it is. I don't believe that Victoria Nuland and any of those neocons are smart enough to come up with that kind of plan. And if they do, I wish they'd try it, because then we can put them in jail and maybe even execute them for treason. But no, I don't see Ukraine as being a training ground for the destruction of American democracy. We don't need Ukraine. We're doing a pretty good job on our own.
All right, let's take one more of the questions submitted in advance. And again, for those of you who want your questions to be considered for the next episode, go to scottritter.us. That's scottritter.us. After this one, we'll take some of the questions coming in live on Facebook and YouTube. Rama from Singapore. In the event Russia doesn't occupy or control the west of Ukraine, U.S. and NATO are still left with a fascist state the size of Texas that is strongly West and NATO aligned. This would continue to pose the same threat as today. What would Russia's strategy be to tackle this situation?
Well, we know that the Russians have articulated denazification as one of their requirements for termination of conflict. So I don't imagine Russia is going to allow a situation to exist where Banderist ideology is allowed to foster and fester in Western Ukraine, that any settlement that will be reached will be inclusive of a denazification process. If Ukraine doesn't want to voluntarily participate in this, then I think the war will continue until Russia gets what it wants. The Russians have said all along that their goals and objectives haven't changed. How Russia achieves that, I don't think even Russia knows specifically how that's going to happen. A lot of it depends on, when Ukraine is ready to make a deal. I think that if Ukraine continues in its current posture, they put Odessa, Kharkov, Sumy, and Dnipropetrovsk at risk of being occupied and permanently absorbed by Russia. And now we're talking 50% of the Ukrainian nation gone forever. So I at some point in time, there's look, this is an unsustainable situation. Politically, it's difficult. Zelensky's not even going home right now. Think about that. Or maybe he is home now. I don't know. I have to check. Where did Graham talk to him? Was that in
I think that was in Ukraine.
In Ukraine. Okay, so maybe he's back, but he's been gone a long time. The army is dying daily. The Russians dominate every aspect of this battle. The Ukrainian counteroffensive, it can't even get off the ground right now. So this war is not going well, and at some point in time, Zelensky will have to make a political decision, because the West isn't going to fund a losing proposition forever. There's already a lot of pressure on him to come up to a peace treaty. When it becomes obvious that he's going to lose territory, that'll be a political, suicide for him. So I think the Russians have this under control. It's not going to be easy. I don't want to pretend that it's going to be easy. There's no guaranteed outcomes, but I think the Russians are smart enough to know what they've said. They're smart enough to know what they want, and they're smart enough to know that they need a plan on how to get there. The fact that they don't articulate in a fashion that we know this just means that they don't really care what we know or don't know, because at the end of the day, we're not decision makers. They are.
Okay, let's take some live questions. And again, we don't have Kevin curating these questions backstage as per usual. I'm just doing this myself, so bear with me. One of our favorites, Valley. She's a regular. Hi, Valley. Always a pleasure. Is it possible you would ever consider running for president? Oh, boy. Here we go.
No, I mean, first of all, the shenanigans that have been done to my reputation make it impossible. Not legally. I mean, there's no requirement, there's no banning, but that would be an uphill battle. Plus, I don't want it. I had an opportunity to run for Congress, a guaranteed seat, a guaranteed seat. Had I said, yes, I want to do this, I would have been Congressman Scott Ritter. Might even be Senator Scott Ritter today, and might even be talking about a potential presidency for Scott Ritter. Not what I want. Washington, D.C. disgusts me. It's a corrupting process. I think people that get involved in it get tainted right off the bat with that process. I'm 61 years old. I'm going to be 62 very soon. I'm not getting any younger. And I think what I'm doing right now is the most important work. I think what Jeff and I are doing in terms of waging peace, this project we have to bring Russians and Americans together to prevent a nuclear war, is more important than anything I could ever do by throwing my hat into the political ring.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of different ways to impart influence, exert influence, I guess would be the word.
Yeah, citizenship is defined in a multiplicity of ways. Good citizenship.
Yes. Let's see what else we have here. Terry Barnes, thank you for the donation. Thanks to everybody for their monetary donations and for tuning in. We appreciate it. Any opinions on the recent border clash between Iran and the IEA? It seems like it's being blown out of proportion by the Western media.
Yeah, I think when he says IEA, I think he's talking about the Taliban, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Yeah, it's been blown out of proportion. Look, some people died. There was fighting, but it's not the first time. They've had clashes like this before. There's ongoing problems with, border control, customs, things of that nature. And, there's also a history of animosity between the Taliban and Iran. So, this is unfortunately one of those things that happened. But I remember when the story first came out, the Taliban declare war on Iran. I'm like, really? That would be fascinating. But they didn't. There's no war. They're going to solve this problem. So you're right. It's been blown out of proportion by the mainstream media.
Okay, I'm just looking for some more questions. Did we do this one? What do you speculate was the Ukrainian the decision-making center that was hit?
I think they said it was the Ukrainian intelligence service. But that's what I think it is. So if you want speculation, there it is. That's my speculation. The Ukrainian intelligence service headquarters was the decision-making center that was hit.
Okay, let's see if we can find some more questions. What about the general in Ukraine who has been missing? Is he still running the show?
I think they're talking about General Zaluzhny. Sometime in early May, he was visiting the front lines, and the facility that he was in, I think it was in the Kherson region, was struck by a Russian missile. Several people were killed, and it was rumored that he was seriously injured. Since that time, he has made appearances. There's speculation that he took shrapnel in the head, and that there were some procedures done where they had to remove pieces of the brain to prevent the swelling, and that might explain why he was out of the picture for a while. That's a debilitating injury. It's hard to imagine that he's still calling the shots, but I think for propaganda and national security reasons, the Ukrainians aren't giving us the full scope and scale on what happened.
Okay. This question comes from Jamie Hidalgo. Don't know if anyone has asked, but what is Scott's opinion on the Marines attacked on Memorial Day in California?
Don't know anything about it.
For or against attacking the Marines? Just kidding. Okay, let's...
Always against attacking Marines.
I know, a little lighthearted quip. Let's see if we can find a couple more questions before we wrap it up. How is the weather in Russia, counteroffensive-wise?
Well, depends where you are. But when I was in Sevastopol, it was still rainy, and I would imagine that the further north you get, there was still rain. But the sun was coming out, and it's like that old song. Up came the sun and dried up all the rain, and the itsy bitsy Ukrainian counteroffensive was off to run again. As the weather improves, the ground improves, and then the Ukrainians will not be able to use a lack of mobility as an excuse. But that's not what's hampering the counteroffensive. What's hampering the counteroffensive is that anytime they bring together any concentration of forces, it's immediately hit by Russian air power and Russian missiles and Russian artillery. The Russians have battlefield superiority and firepower superiority, and the Ukrainians just aren't able to generate the kind of mass necessary to carry out a concerted offensive operation against Russia.
How is the morale of the middle class where you visited? Was there any open animosity to you due to your U.S. citizenship?
The morale of the Russian people in general was fantastic. This is a nation united. Again, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I don't care.
We like trouble.
Russia, 200, 300, 400,000, who knows what the numbers are. Russians fled Russia because of the special military operation. And I think the attitude of most Russians is good riddance. They just got rid of the weakest element of their society. They got rid of mainly Navalny supporters, people who were a cancer to Russia, and they're gone. The Russians that remain, it doesn't mean that they're blind, faithfully supporting Vladimir Putin. No, but they support Russia. They believe in Russia. The people that fled don't believe in Russia. They believe in something that the West wants to define as Russia. They believe in a Western narrative of Russia, but they don't believe in Russia. Because if they believed in Russia, they wouldn't buy any of the crap that Navalny's trying to peddle. There are two Russias. There is the big city Russia, Moscow, St. Petersburg, maybe Ekaterinburg, maybe Novosibirsk could be thrown in there, a handful of other cities. And there you have a sort of a political economic elite residing that are somewhat disengaged from the pulse of the nation, so to speak. They're into the money. We're making money. We're living a good lifestyle business. The rest of Russia is in the business of being Russian. And I have to tell you, you go to these train stations, and I did the classic planes, trains, and automobile tour of Russia. We did it all. And I stopped at one train station, and an entire car was full of guys heading to the front. They were either going as part of Wagner or people volunteering for various the volunteer units. These are one was a 51-year-old former Russian Marine who just said, I can't sit at home while this war is going on, and he found a way to volunteer and get in there. When we landed in Kazan, there are train loads of Kazan boys heading to the war, and the whole. Their families are out there giving them the big hoorah on their, sending them off. Russia is alive. Russia is well. Russia is populated by people who believe in Russia, who have faith in Russia, who define the Russian soul. And that's a point that has to be driven home. I think there's a lot of people that think out there that Russia is full of a lethargic, apathetic population that is ignorant and not aware of what's going on. These guys know exactly what's going on. They know the good, the bad, and the ugly of their government. They're not all happy with, they like Putin. They recognize that Putin has saved Russia, that Putin is the savior of Russia, but they're not happy with the people around Putin. They recognize things about them that they don't like. They would like to see things different. But if you ask them to choose between supporting, an inadequate Putin government or supporting the collective West, they're going to rally around Putin. That's why he has unbelievable levels of support. The Russians are for Putin. The Russians are for Russia.
Alexandra Wolf, who's watching on YouTube, asks, what would be an adequate response to the latest attacks on Moscow?
Take out a decision-making center and continue to slaughter Ukrainian troops on the front line until the Ukrainian army collapses and the war ends.
Roger Codger, what is the blueprint banner over your right shoulder? It might be left to the way people are watching on their monitors, but anyway.
That is Football Club Akhmat. They are a professional football club, plays in the Russian Premier League equivalent, the Akhmat team out of Grozny. And while we were there, we were guests. We were invited to watch them play the team from Khimki, which is a Moscow suburb, and they won the game 3-0. It was a thrilling match. But I was their guest. They honored me with not just the scarf, but the coin of their founder, Ahmad Kadyrov, the first president. He was assassinated in 2004. His son Ramzan Kadyrov has taken over since then. People can criticize them all they want. Just go take a look at a photograph of 2002, what Grozny looked like, the most destroyed city in the world at that time, and walk through the city that I experienced when I was there just a week ago. And you'll understand that there is no criticism. Chechnya is thriving. The people are healthy, wealthy, and wise. They're at peace. And you showed a video earlier of me walking around a facility, not just where we got to do shooting and stuff, but I was given the honor and privilege of inspecting the Presidential Guard for Ramzan Kadyrov, and they introduced me to these guys. These were the veterans of Mariupol, the people who captured Mariupol, and they're heroes. And it's one thing that I'll be talking about. When we talk about Russia, you got to understand it's 150 plus different ethnic groups and linguistic groups and a large Muslim population. And the Christians and the Muslims in the Russian Federation get along just fine.
All right, let's do one more question. This is from Truth Hopeful Seeker, something like that, watching on YouTube. You being a book author and a well-known one who has returned to Russia with a bit of a cold, apparently, have you had a chance to meet other book authors from Russia within Russia?
I got more than a chance. I met with the Writers Union in Moscow, so that was an honor. Somewhere I have a statue of Pushkin that they gave me to commemorate that visit, but it was the Writers Union. I got to meet with the writers, and then everywhere I went in Russia, other authors came up. I was given a fantastic tour of Lake Baikal by a guy who wrote the book on the Irkutsk American Company. He back when Alaska was part of Russia, he wrote a book. He did an expedition that went from Lake Baikal and then to Alaska down to Sitka, and he wrote a great book about this. So I got to meet him. I'm going to try and help him get his book published into English language. It's a wonderful book. I think Americans would benefit by reading it. It's just a fantastic story of this expedition to capture this moment in time and to improve relations between Russians and Americans. It's right up our alley, Jeff. So that's it. Okay, so what's the next question?
All right, let's get one more in here. This is a good one. I think the most abusive insult made against Russia from the West, especially from America, was to claim that Putin is a war criminal. Americans showed their true colors in saying this. What are your thoughts, Mr. Ritter?
Vladimir Putin could not be charged under any jurisdiction as a war criminal. He has not committed a war crime. People are trying to say that he, as the leader of Russia, that the special military operation was an illegal act of aggression. I've written about this. I will continue to write about this, and I will continue to speak about this. It was a complete justifiable action under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, under the doctrine of preemptive self-defense. And Russia is able to articulate a clearly cognizable case for this, far more cognizable than the case made by the United States to illegally invade Iraq in 2003. George W. Bush is a war criminal. Barack Obama is a war criminal. We can just go to Bill Clinton as a war criminal. These are people that, if they were ever taken before a jurisdiction of competence, they can't, because the United States won't join these jurisdictions. But if they ever were, it's a slam dunk case against them as war criminals, as participating in the gravest war crime of all, which is a war of aggression, from which all other war crimes come from. Vladimir Putin has not carried out a war of aggression, so it's a singular insult to accuse him of doing such. But they're not even, the International Criminal Court didn't even do that. What they've done is they've accused him of kidnapping children. I want these people, anybody who believes this is the case, to understand that when this war started, there were hundreds, thousands of Ukrainian children abandoned in the war zone, orphans, many of them. And what the Russians did is take them under their protection. They evacuated them from danger and sent them into camps. The camps are pioneer camps. They're camps that are designed to receive children and to give children healthy things to do, to take care of children, feed children, provide housing for children. And they closed them down for Russian children so that these Ukrainian children would have a place to stay. And then the Russians have sought to find the lawful guardians of these people. You don't kidnap kids, treat them the way the Russians are treating them. Then when people show up and say, that's my child, turn them over to the children, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Vladimir Putin isn't a war criminal. He deserves a goddamn medal from the international community for saving these children. It's the sign of the despicable nature of the International Criminal Court, the United States, Europe, and NATO, that they allow this perversion of justice to take place. The Russians are right to put Khan, the prosecutor from ICC, under a warrant for his arrest. He is a criminal. He is a criminal. He's somebody who's using international law for political purposes. He is falsely accused a head of state of a crime that wasn't confused. And what's interesting is he's destroying the ICC in the process. That's half the problem with these egomaniacs, these narcissists who get promoted to these positions and think that suddenly they are people who are a law unto themselves. South Africa said that they're not going to enforce. In fact, South Africa may withdraw from the ICC, and I think you're going to see a lot of other nations do. This is the end of the ICC.
All right, Scott. I see we have a phone call. Dare we try this? Should we give it a shot? See if it works?
Give it a shot.
All right. Hello, caller. Are you there? Are you there?
Kaldal from Greece.
Kaldal. Hello, Kaldal.
What's on your mind, Kaldal?
Hi. Yeah. Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. We're
Yes,
anxiously
I am.
awaiting you to say something. Get to it, Kaldal. Come on, baby. Kaldal.
I think there's a lag.
All right. Are you still there, Kaldal? Oh, maybe she's not hearing us. Maybe that was the problem. Oh, Faith.
You mean we're the problem? We're the problem?
I don't know, but I don't hear her anymore.
Well, that's too bad, because Kaldal's a great person. She been very supportive.
All right. One more before we wind it up. Are you there, Kaldal? We'll give it one more shot. Are you there? No? I don't know what happened. All right, Kaldal, send us an email. We'll figure it out. We'll try to get you on next time. All right, Scott. Let's see. What else? Before we say goodbye, let's remind folks that they can get one of these handsome T-shirts.